this English lesson where I am once again going to talk about describing people. In the past, I've done four other English lessons on this topic, but there are so many ways to describe people. This topic in particular will focus on how to describe children. Not all of the words I'm going to teach you are for children, but most of them we use primarily when we're talking about our kids or our nieces and nephews or our students in our classroom. So this English lesson will be about describing primarily children, but you can use some of these to describe other people as well. So stick around. We'll do this English lesson about describing people. We'll start in just a moment. Rambunctious. As I mentioned, many of these words we would use to describe children. Okay? When I was a kid, I was rambunctious. When you describe someone as being rambunctious, it means they have a lot of energy and they run around a lot and they jump up and down when they have questions. I do want to remind you too, this is more than a vocabulary lesson. You should listen to the phrases I use whenever I talk about the words, so that you can use them yourself as well. I said when I was a kid, I was rambunctious. When we went to my grandparents' house, my dad would always get annoyed if we ran around like crazy. But we use the word crazy in English to emphasize. When I was a kid, if I ran around like crazy and my face was all red because I was hot from running around, my dad would say to me, "Stop being a crazy kid. Stop being so rambunctious." Grandpa and Grandma don't like it, but my Grandpa and Grandma would usually be smiling. It was a funny time, but I was a rambunctious child. I was full of energy. Whenever I was somewhere visiting, I was always running around and jumping up and down and doing things like most kids do. We have another phrase in English. Sometimes we describe a kid or a child as being a handful. So this is neither good nor bad. This can either be good or bad. Sometimes when you say, "Whoa, he's really a handful," maybe you have a nephew or niece or one of your own kids, or you know a child who's 4 or 5 years old that's just always doing things. Like in this picture, I just assume one sister is knitting and the other one is just trying to undo the knitting. So we would describe that child as a handful. A child that sometimes doesn't listen to their parents, we would describe as a handful. But again, it can have a positive connotation as well. You can say that, "Whoa, your kids are so full of energy, they must be quite a handful." We also use the phrase, always up to something. Kids who are a handful are often up to something all the time. They're always doing things. This is definitely a negative word. A child who is spoiled is a child whose parents have given them everything that they want in life. So when I was a child, I was not spoiled. My parents did not have a lot of money. Even though you see that I live on a really big property, when my parents immigrated from Holland, they did not have very much money. So I didn't have a lot of toys when I was a kid. I was not spoiled. A spoiled child gets every toy they want from their parents. A spoiled child, if they go to the grocery store with their parents, they get every kind of food that they ask for. Like, "I want that, I want that." So a spoiled child gets everything that they want. I see Lolly Lolly in the chat saying, "I was a real handful." Yes, I wonder how some of you were as children, whether you were a real handful or whether some of you were rambunctious as well. I hope none of you were spoiled. Spoiled children who get everything that they want, sometimes end up being spoiled adults a little bit. They end up being a little bit entitled. So when you describe someone as being entitled, you could describe children and teenagers and adults as being entitled. It means that they feel like everything should be given to them. A child who is spoiled, in my opinion, a child who gets everything they want when they are a kid, sometimes grows up to be an entitled teenager or an entitled adult. They think that everything should just be given to them. they feel like they're entitled to it. It's kind of a strange personality trait when you are entitled. Entitled people tend to be a little bit difficult to be around. It can be frustrating it can be frustrating to be around people who are entitled because they sometimes make you feel like you should do things for them. I, a long time ago, worked with someone who was entitled. It was a strange experience. Another word for rambunctious is hyper. I think the longer form of the word is hyperactive. I think some children are hyperactive. When I was a kid, I just got to check my slides here. I would have been described as hyper as well. When a child is hyper, they have lots of energy. They have trouble sitting in their seat. They're kind of hyper. They talk a lot. They run around a lot. Children who are hyper are certainly like that. Sorry, I just see in the chat Brett saying, I was every parent's dream as a kid. So I have a slide maybe that describes Brett coming up later. We'll see if this one applies to Brett. Some children are inquisitive, and I know this seems like a really long and big English word, but we do use this word. We will say things like, one of my children is really inquisitive, or my neighbor's kid is really inquisitive, or my nephew or niece is very inquisitive. An inquisitive child is interested in the things around them. So in this picture, you can see an adult playing a guitar, and the child is interested. The child is being inquisitive. They want to know where the sounds come from. Maybe they want to play the strings themselves. My children have always been inquisitive. It's really cool. So when I do things, they like to ask me questions about it. They're not as inquisitive about the flower farm though. They like computers, but they don't all like flower farms. So hopefully they grow into it. So, this maybe is going to be the one that describes Brett, because I saw he said that he was his parents' dream. Maybe Brett was well-behaved. A well-behaved child is a child who doesn't break the rules. A well-behaved child does what their parents tell them to do. A well-behaved child at school listens to the teacher. When the teacher gives instructions, a well-behaved child will say, okay, no problem. So different than a spoiled child or maybe an entitled child, a well-behaved child is just a nice kid. That would probably be how we would describe them as well. Your children are very well behaved. People would sometimes say that to me, and then I would say, you should see them at home. Sometimes when we were out in public, when our children were younger, they were well behaved. They were always well behaved in public, but not always well behaved at home. So there you go, some good information about the term well behaved. So the opposite of well-behaved would be rebellious. This word is often used when talking about teenagers. Some teenagers go through a rebellious stage or a rebellious phase in their life. So sometime around age 14 or 15 until they're about 20 or 21, they rebel. They don't want to listen to people who are in charge of them. They don't want to listen to authority. So rebellious teenagers sometimes don't listen to their parents. They don't listen to their teachers. Sometimes they get in trouble with the law. And sometimes they engage in behavior that we call self-destructive. Okay, so a rebellious teenager might do things that are self-destructive, like smoking. Sometimes maybe they do drugs, but definitely teenagers who are rebellious do not listen to teachers, do not listen to their parents. Rebellious teachers. That was a little slip there. Yes, teachers are sometimes rebellious, but that's not what I meant. Rebellious teenagers just don't listen to people in authority over them. When I use the phrase in authority, that would mean parents or their boss or their teachers, people who are in authority over them. You might have run into a child who is alert. A child who is alert Well, it's the opposite of a child who falls asleep. When we would drive in our van a long distance, some of our kids would fall asleep. But we have other kids who were very alert while we were driving. They like to look at things out of the window. Sometimes children who are alert sit in the front of the classroom, and they're very interested in the lesson. So a child who is alert doesn't always have their eyes wide open, but it's a good way to remember the word alert. A child who is alert is certainly paying attention. A child who is alert is certainly aware of what's happening around them. Let's see here. Yes, Brent has to run. Sorry, Brent, I know you have to work today. I don't. In Canada, we don't work on Good Friday. I know in the U.S. you guys still do sometimes, but we don't. We get the day off.